everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Not Alone on Maria Vision. I'm your host, Lauren Owens, and today we're going to be talking about commitment. So first off, let's introduce our guests. So this is...
Hi, I'm Kenzie Thomas. I am a sophomore at AMU, and I'm a psychology major.
My name is Matthew Brown. I'm a marketing and accounting major, and I'm a sophomore.
My name is Joe Hamilton. I am a sophomore transfer at AMU, and I am an exercise and physiology major.
Hi, I'm Maddy. I'm a sophomore at AMU, and I'm an elementary education major.
So these are all returners except for Joe, so thank you for coming on the show. And let's start off with a prayer. In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, amen. Dear God, I pray that you give us the wisdom and the clarity to speak your word today and to reach our audience. Let's pray Hail Mary. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and at the hour of our death. Amen. In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen. Okay, so to start us off with the topic of commitment, I wanted to address why commitment is so important. So when I think about it, it's like you have to put in work for something in order for you to get good results. Like you can't just put in like a minimal effort and expect something quality to come out of it. So what do you guys think?
I think commitment's so important in every aspect of life.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I feel like you're kind of lazy if you don't put that 100% effort and commitment into anything you do. Like, you got to put it into relationships and what you like, your schoolwork, your faith. It's so important.
Yeah, and like when you say that, like it makes you lazy if you don't do those things, why is it bad to be lazy, you know? Because you don't get something out of it. That's what I think. Like you're not reaching your end goal in life. You're not fulfilling your purpose.
Yeah.
I think commitment's in a weird stage right now because I hear a lot of my friends or some people be like, I'm afraid of commitment. And I think, okay, so I'm assuming you have the fear of like failure is what I hear from that. And that they need to observe in a way that being committed and trying, even though like my parents used to say like if I were to go into a test and I gave it my all.
Yeah.
If I gave it my all and still came out with a D, I did give it my all.
Yeah.
You know, and that's all that matters is that you try your best and you're gonna learn from those mistakes. So yeah, I think that commitment is something that some people fear and they shouldn't. It's something that's so beautiful, and if we fear everything, life's not gonna be wholesome or full.
Okay, that's a really good point. I wasn't really thinking about the fear side of it until now, but even with like relationships, when people say like, oh, like commitment in marriage is so scary, it's so intense. Well, the thing is, if you truly value commitment, you do realize the gravity of like, once I give it my all, I'm giving it my all. That's why it's scary, I think, is because if you take it seriously, it should be a big deal. But like, obviously, it's something you should do.
So not only, like, adding on to your fear of failure, like, so let's say if you fail repeatedly, that's just like giving you more ground to come all the way back up. Like the comeback from that is just gonna be wild.
Yeah.
So like I've definitely realized that through sports and through life that the farther down you dig, the more you can dig all the way back up. And so I think being afraid of failure is just a learning experience.
Yeah.
Like I think everybody goes through it at some point, and then at some point you realize, okay, there's really nothing to fear.
Like, can it really get that much worse?
Exactly.
Like, I'm already failing, so the most I could do is just keep trying.
Exactly.
Yeah, and would you guys say there's like specific qualities or virtues that you need, like when you're trying to be committed?
Faith.
Wow, that was profound.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would say that persistence is really important, obviously. That's just like the most obvious part about commitment is like if you're not being what's the word, like regular and consistent with it. So say you like set a goal for yourself, like to go to the gym, and you commit to that goal, that means that you're going to do something regularly. It's not like when your heart desires it and then when I don't feel like it, I don't do it, you know?
Discipline.
Yeah.
Yeah, you need discipline. If you want to be committed to someone or something, or, you know, if you want to go to the gym or you want to treat somebody right, or you want to just do whatever you want to do, if you want to be committed to it, you have to be disciplined. You have to be able to do it when you don't want to do it, and you have to be, you know, keep a smile on your face and just do it. And I think discipline's the biggest part with that. And then also humility as well.
Yeah.
I think humility plays a huge part in, you know, especially being committed to somebody else.
Yeah.
I think compassion's a major one. Like, you have to be able to be patient with one another and be vulnerable with one another. I think that's so important. And like, of course, communication's also important with commitment. I think those are some key ones.
Totally.
Yeah.
And why would you say like communication is so important, like to that?
See, I mean, in a committed friendship, relationship, whatever, it's so important to know what's going on in each other's minds.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have that, something can be off. Like,
Yeah,
totally.
I think it's like easy to like back down from like what's scary.
And it's also with your faith. Like, if you're not committed to like Christ, like communication with God, like that's so important. Prayer, that's also very important in a committed.
Communication's the trying part of a relationship.
Yeah.
It's you putting in the effort. And without effort, you can't be committed. You know, so if you're in a relationship with God and you don't pray, He's never gonna, I mean, He'll hear from you, but it won't be the same kind of relationship as strong as a foundation, like just the same as if you see a girl walking down the hallway and you say hi to her every once in a while, comparison to like your roommate best friend.
That's true.
Who you talk to 24/7. You know, you're just not gonna be as close.
Yeah, so that was actually my next question was, what do you guys think about like the commitment that we need to further our faith? Because I see it like the relationships we have with humans are so similar with what God wants from us, which is like if you put in the work, you will have a stronger relationship with Him. So I feel like just going to Him when it's convenient, that's not showing commitment to Him. You know, because that's what comes to my mind is commitment is doing like what's not easy.
Yeah, so before actually I came to school, my faith was not nearly as strong as it is now.
Yeah.
And oddly, somehow ironically, I've been a happier person ever since my faith got stronger.
So ironic, yeah.
It's ironic, right? It's crazy how that happens.
Yeah.
But like it's just different coming from my history and stuff like that, and then coming to a Catholic school. It's just benefited a lot, just having a commitment to faith.
Totally, and that's what I'm like thinking about is when we put in minimal effort, it feels like so mediocre. Like it's not that you're really in a bad state in life, but I think the minimal effort in your faith life, you can let it slip by for so long and just kind of distract yourself with worldly things. And then once you realize that the commitment aspect of it brings like happiness, not just like living like a middle life, you're actually like ecstatic and happy. I feel like that makes a big difference.
I think especially at Ave Maria, it makes it so like easy to commit because we have, the Catholic Church gives us our commitments
100%.
to Mass, adoration, confessions, like all those things. And I feel like we're so blessed to have all those opportunities at Ave Maria, but that also helps us commit and deepen our faith with Christ.
Yeah,
that's so
and
important.
it's nice that like, what's nice about it is that we have the community where everyone around you can hold you accountable. Like, of course, somebody might slip up and you shouldn't just look to everybody else to be your role models, but it is nice when your friend will hold you accountable because they know your goals and like your beliefs. Yeah. And then how would you guys say that commitment applies to a romantic relationship? Because I feel like that's the most obvious or like the thing that people think about the most with commitment. I definitely think that dating life is different from the married life as far as commitment goes, because that's why it's so scary or like exciting when you get married, is because you're taking on this new level of commitment.
I mean, when you're dating, in comparison to when you're married, you're showing that person this is what you're gonna get. And I think sometimes you try a little harder in the beginning stages because you want to show that you're gonna be there. And I think that's an aspect of commitment. And then once the married life takes place, you have to commit with kids and with finances, and you have to show full force you're going to be there. So yeah, I just think that it's so neat how commitment changes throughout the course of a relationship, through life. Like you're just committed to different things. When you're parents, you're committed to your kids. When you're dating someone, you're committed to your partner.
Yeah.
And you're committed to wanting to grow a foundation in order to find
I totally agree with that.
a marriage material relationship.
Yeah,
So,
I feel
very
like
cool.
that's a really good point, that when you're dating, you're kind of like setting that foundation, because once you're married, like you don't always have the time to prioritize, and obviously like you should, but you don't always have the time to focus on the person you're married to. You have other responsibilities that are just taking care of the family.
And it's like a blessing at that point too. When you're married, you just already know. It's not like you have to keep showing anymore because they know each other so well.
And that's where the trust comes in. I would say trust is a big part of commitment, because you have to trust the process, and you have to trust that even though something's not easy, that there was going to be a good outcome from it. Yeah. What do you guys think?
So an interesting take I've actually heard in the past is actually that you're not actually committed to someone until you're married. And that's an interesting take to me because I grew up in a Catholic household. I grew up with a lot of Christian family. And we always said, you date to marry.
Yeah.
And so that's what I've always grew up with. And so whenever I hear these other people, they're like, you're not actually committed until you get married. It's just a different take, and I've never believed that. But
Yeah.
I know a lot of others like that
Yeah.
out there. And I definitely know in the Bible that it says, you date to marry and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it just makes sense to me.
No, totally. I think it's interesting that there's so many ways you can define like what commitment should be, and I think as Catholics we do have a very particular understanding of what it is, which is like when you're dating, it's intentional. Like you're not dating to distract yourself. It's the relationship should bring each other closer to God, and if the relationship is bringing you closer to God, you should like want to marry that person. Like it should be a good, healthy relationship. Yeah.
I mean, with all my relationships and stuff, like commitment, a big form, I know I mentioned this earlier, is communication.
Yeah.
I think that's so important, but also being patient with each other and just understanding each other. And I think that's definitely super important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. And then what would you guys say about like overcommitting? Do you think it's possible to overcommit, or can you commit
Yes.
too much?
Yes, it's okay to say no sometimes.
Yeah.
You don't want to overcommit yourself and not be able to put your full quality effort into it. I feel like sometimes, I know I'm a people pleaser, so I try to say yes as much as I can, but
Yeah.
sometimes I just can't.
Yeah.
I'm human. Sometimes I'm just not able to do it. So
I feel that, yeah.
I believe it's okay to say no every once in a while.
Totally. Did you want to add something, Matt?
She got it.
She nailed it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that I feel like overcommitting is something like that we do because we want to make others happy.
Yeah.
And when you realize that if it's not possible, you're gonna disappoint them. So like the whole idea of commitment is you're making like this promise, whether it's to yourself or to another person or to God. If you can't hold that promise, you're not committing. So in reality, I don't know if there's such thing as overcommitting, because committing is like actually following through and doing it. But there is such a thing as trying to commit to too many things and not being able to do it, like failing at committing.
I mean, I would say too, you can't let your commitments take over your entire life. Like I used to know, I run cross country and track, and I used to have teammates who that was their whole life.
Yeah.
Was running, and that commitment to running. They would race really bad, or something would happen. They'd get so mad, so frustrated, to the point where they were just like depressed all the time.
Yeah.
And you can't just focus on one part of your life. You have family. You have so many people who love you.
Yeah. Okay, we're getting a call. Hi, welcome to Not Alone on Maria Vision. You're on the air.
Yeah, so can I please not say who I am or where I'm from?
Yeah, totally.
I'm on the air for real?
Yes.
Live?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know that women are beautiful and they're smart?
Thank you.
And one more thing. Y'all don't know who this is. Fat women are beautiful too and smart. Fat.
Okay. Thank you so much. So back to the topic. I just wanted to talk about sports because you were getting into sports and you're talking about cross country. And I wanted to ask you, Matt, because you're doing football, and I know you started out as a football manager, but now there's a different type of commitment that comes with being the player,
Yeah, especially, so I did football for 15 years before I came here, and then I quit, and I went to being a manager. But it's just, there's a different level of commitment when it comes to things like that. Like with relationships, you fully commit yourself, to a person, and you say, I'm going to, put myself underneath of you, and I'm going to commit myself to you. And then it's the same with sports. You have to treat it like it's a relationship, especially in college. It's like a job. Like it is a job. You're getting paid to do this. You have to commit to it, unlike anything else. So when
We're having a laugh attack.
you're good.
It's okay. I do this like once a day. I'm really tired. Sometimes I just start laughing. Anyway, continue.
So with sports, it just, I don't know, it's difficult to explain just because it's consumed my entire life.
Yeah.
I got to a point where, especially having my dad as my head coach when I was in high school, there's a point, and he played Division I football, he played in the NFL, and there's a point where you just do everything, and that's all you do. Like football was everything I did for so long. I was fully committed to it. I had no friends. I had literally, my life was football. I'd come home from school and my dad's like, let's sit down and watch film. I'd go to school And he'd be like, all right, let's, I'm going to send you stuff. I want you to look over it during lunch. I want you to look over it during study hall. And when we come out to practice, you're living your life through football. On Saturdays, it's game day. You're coming home after the game. You're taking an ice bath, and you're watching film immediately.
Yeah.
And in college, and I got sick of it, but I also had to put my foot down and be like, if this is something I'm going to do for the rest of my life, I have to be committed to it. You guys are killing me.
Stop laughing. Okay. But no, I think you raised really good points. There's something about losing sight of what's important, which is like your relationship with God. And I feel like that's the thing, is there's like a level of importance to commitment.
Yeah.
Like if you place your sports commitment above your commitment to God, I feel like, there's definitely a hierarchy with that.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say is I overcommitted,
Yeah.
which you can do. You can overcommit to a person, you can
That's true.
overcommit to a sport, you can 100% overcommit.
That's true, yeah.
And that's what I did, and it damaged my faith life, it damaged my life with my friends, it damaged my life with family, it damaged my life with a lot of other things. But at the same time, it built in me a level of discipline that I still practice to this day. Like, I may not have enjoyed it when it got towards the end, and now I'm obviously back doing it again because I actually enjoy it, but being that committed built a level of humility, a good level of pride, a good level of discipline that carried me over into everything that I do now.
Yeah.
If I learned what it's like, especially with failure. That's why failure is one of the best things that can happen to you, because it teaches you how to pick yourself back up when no one else is going to pick you up.
Yeah.
And how to keep moving forward. Like my dad always told me, you don't ever quit no matter what, but if you fail, that's okay. Because you get back up from failure and you learn how to recommit yourself into something that's actually important. And I would say just in sports, football's been such a blessing just because it taught me at least a level of discipline, a level of commitment, a level of humility, and a good level of pride that, carries me in everything else that I do.
I think there's an aspect of like obsession where it comes down to commitment. Like
Totally.
if you're overcommitted with something, it becomes obsessive.
Yeah.
I think that's sometimes where like obsessive compulsive disorder arises from, like where you have like just like so much commitment to like, I want a clean house, I want to get this certain grade, I want to,
I'm going to bounce off of what Matt's saying with the sports. Like, running takes a ton of commitment. Me and Ken's both run cross country and track, and if you fall off for like a couple days and don't run, you could lose it all. Like, that endurance, you have to be so consistent with it. So that like commitment to it is so important. Plus, it's like, like Kenzie said, we have had some teammates who overcommit to it, but we're lucky enough to have coaches like Coach Julia and Coach Webb who teach us the perfect amount of commitment to the sport.
Yeah.
They teach us how we can incorporate Christ into it as well and commit to Christ with our sport as well, which is so awesome.
Yeah, so I'm going to bounce off of what Matt said again. And I used to be the exact same way. So I'm a golfer, as you can tell. And
Just straight off the course.
yeah, right off there.
Yep.
And golf, just like every other sport, it requires a ton of commitment. And so I was actually getting a haircut one time. And my aunt gave me this mental golf game book. And as always, like, golf was my life. And so I really struggled for a long time because I wasn't becoming any better. Like, the results weren't there.
Yeah.
And so I was falling. And so she gave me this book, and one of the chapters was Golf is Not Life. And it was by this guy. And he wrote, he used to play at the University of Texas, and he had a terrible round one day. He comes back, he goes to his dorm, he's slamming his clubs.
Yeah.
He's slamming his putter, he's throwing balls against the wall. He walks down the stairs, and he sees this guy in a wheelchair walking down the ramp. Not walking, rolling down the ramps.
Not walking.
And that just put how important sports are in a perspective.
Totally.
It's a, I don't know what the word is, but
It's
we're
like
allowed to do
privilege.
it. It's
I
a
think
privilege
totally
to get to play
privilege.
golf. This guy that's sitting in his wheelchair, he's wishing he was us.
Totally.
He's just hoping he can somehow get on his feet again one day.
Yeah.
So golf and like sports and being able to stand on your feet is a privilege.
That's a really good way to think about it, and I don't think people recognize the blessings that we're given because they seem like we're just granted them, like we should just have them. Because it's just like, oh yeah, most humans enjoy this privilege, this blessing. But like, in another way, I feel like when you're sick, like even when you just catch the flu or something, you realize you're like, oh no, I will never take my health for granted again. Then you catch yourself like being like upset about something small and petty, and you're like, okay, you have to keep reminding yourself. So I feel like God places these challenges in front of us, these like times of like trial during a bad game or something like that, or just a rough time in your sports life, because it helps you to put it in perspective that this is a blessing if you have a good game or if you do well at your sport, you know?
To bounce off of that, Kenzie and I have had our fair share of injuries and know exactly what that feels like, and just puts things in a huge perspective, like you said.
Kind of pushes you down and humbles you a little.
It's like, okay, I'll be okay without running.
Yeah.
You know, but
which is not easy to think about.
It's not easy to think about, but at the same time, you can be like, okay, I have other commitments in my life that are important too. Mm-hmm. And my commitment to God comes above all that. So that definitely. Yeah.
And earlier when Matt was saying like he does believe you can overcommit, I take back what I said about like you obviously can overcommit. I agree with that, but I don't think you can overcommit in your relationship with God. I think that's more kind of what I was saying is like, of course you can overwhelm yourself to the point where it's like not humanly possible, but it's never like a bad thing. If you can take on a lot of commitment to your relationship, do it. Like add things to your prayer life that like help you.
I was just learning about that in my ethics class. I'm reading Aristotle and Nicomachean Ethics with Dr. Travick.
I see you.
And one of the things says that the perfect happiness comes from complete divine contemplation with Christ. All the time, no other commitments.
Yeah.
And that's perfect happiness.
That's our purpose.
But it also says like we as human beings aren't perfect.
Yeah.
And we are unable to achieve that perfect happiness because we are unaware of being able to fully commit to that. But
yeah,
that's
and I mean, if you look at like the saints and just people who go into monasteries and commit their life to God, it's like so beautiful, and we kind of see it as unachievable sometimes. It seems like those are the people who are just so virtuous, and I'm just your regular guy, like I'm just the regular person, you know? The truth is that like we can all have like a healthy, I wouldn't even call it a balance because it shouldn't really be a balance, it should be like your main priority. We could have that and still be like the average person, because there are saints that were so like average, just normal people. So yeah, I was like, there was a retreat the other weekend about like Saint Therese, and they're talking about how she's just like this average, like super cute young girl, and nobody really wanted to take her seriously like as a saint, because it's like, oh, did she do anything like that spectacular? But it's like the love, like the beauty that came from the love she showed for Christ, that was enough, you know? Like you don't have to be copying somebody else. You can be your own unique type of saint. You know what I mean? Yeah. And then I was going to ask you guys what you think the role of commitment is in the family unit. So I know we talked about like marriage, but when it comes down to like the father and mother and the siblings, what's the commitment you have to that family?
I mean, I was talking about it earlier, where it's just like when parenting, when you're called to that kind of vocation, children are your commitment. I know for sure in my family, my parents are the bomb. I'm always shouting them out on the show.
It's like it wouldn't be a normal show if you didn't shout them out.
Without saying, hey, love my parents.
Yeah.
But I think that the children can easily have a commitment within the family. You gotta get good grades. You gotta be grateful for what you're receiving. You have to make your parents proud. I mean, there is an aspect of gratitude with trying your best and committing yourself to things that are so beautiful and important to a family.
I'm gonna bounce on that. I'm committed to you as your sister.
Yeah.
I have a commitment towards my sister too. I always feel like I have that. I mean, I'm like I'm protective and all that. And that's like my commitment toward Kenzie. Of like my commitment is, I have to walk with her to this place so she's not by herself in the dark. But there's also deeper commitments than that. But
yeah.
My commitment is the comedic relief.
Committed to bringing the humor.
Yes,
that's
always.
fun.
No, but
I mean, committed to supporting each other through everything. Kenzie and I have been through a lot, and through all the roller coaster of experiences we've had, and we've been committed to each other and had each other's backs, which has been so awesome.
I feel like there's the small things that you're like, this is what I ought to do as like a member of the family, and then there's also the commitments that you make to like be there for them mentally and like emotionally, I guess. So like you were saying, you're like to walk her in the dark. I think there's commitments like the father's like, I'm gonna provide and do all these things. but then there's also a commitment of like loyalty to the family. Like, I'm not going to betray my family, you know? I'm going to stay loyal and focus on them and not get caught up in like my work to the point where I'm prioritizing that, or not like just losing sight of things. I think that's part of commitment, is just remembering what the priorities are. Yeah. So what's your guys' take? What's your guys' take on like Mary? Because the thing is that she has so much commitment to God, but like obviously to Christ also, because she was a mother of God. So what would you guys say about Mary's role?
I would say I think her and St. Joseph both are because I'm a part of the St. Joseph's Men group, and we actually just got done talking about him and Mary before this. And I think Mary is the ultimate show of commitment, because she was willing. I mean, you have to look at it. God knew what was going to happen. He knew she was going to say yes, but she didn't.
Yeah.
Mary could have said no.
Yeah.
She could have said no. She could have said, I'm not doing this. But she was willing to commit herself to a plan. She had no idea how it was going to work out. I mean, as far as she knew, she was giving birth to God. I mean, that's just a crazy thought. And, by itself. But at the same time, she threw away her life. She threw away what she thought she was going to do and did what she had to do, which is, obviously bearing Christ and being the mother of the church. But I think, just her commitment, especially, and then on top of that, I think St. Joseph is a big part of that. As, we were talking about the family. Yeah. The father has a commitment. The father's number one commitment to his family is getting them to heaven. Yeah. Obviously you have your kids and, financial health and your wife's health and all this other stuff. Your number one commitment is to get your spouse and your children, if you have children, to heaven and to better yourself as well. So, and I think St. Joseph mirrors off of Mary. He, in the same way, his wife just got pregnant and he had no idea how it happened. He's now being told he's going to be the father of, God. He's getting told that Herod's coming to kill all the firstborn. So, we were talking about that earlier. It's like, one, I don't know how my wife just got pregnant. Now my son is potentially going to die. I'm being told my son is God. And now I have to get up and move to another country, or across the desert. Yeah. So, and his level of commitment shows at least what young men need to mirror, kind of to go off with what we were talking about with like, how do you show commitment in your relationship? Being able, when you're dating, I don't know how to say it. It's not practicing, but you're showing the person that you're committed to that you are ready and you know how to do this, and that no matter how many times you stumble, you're going to recommit yourself to that person and you're going to better yourself because you want to be better for them. Yeah. And I think, Mary and Joseph are just the perfect image of, she was obviously perfect, but he wasn't. Yeah. And he humbled himself and she humbled herself, and they both committed themselves to a plan. They had no idea how it was going to work out. And now, she's the mother of God and he's the father of God. So it's just kind of crazy. Yeah. And when you were talking about Mary's, like, basically just dropping her whole life, that just reminded me of the selflessness that it takes to, like, commit to something. And then also just, like, again, to talk about the trust, Joseph having trust in God's plan, even though it didn't make any sense to him, most likely. That's really interesting, because it's just like, there's a point where you just can't question. Like, of course, we're just naturally questioning people. Like, we like to, like, ask why. But then there's also that point where you're like, okay, I'm so committed that regardless of what the answer is, I'm just like, I'm doing what you say. Like, with God, I think that's the case. Yeah. So I think there's a big part of, it just takes faith, and ultimately 100%. Faith is just trust in God. Yeah. It's, life sucks right now. There's a lot of things happening, but I trust that if I keep doing what I'm doing, I'm going to be okay. If I stay committed to the Lord, I'm going to be okay. If I stay committed to my girlfriend, no matter how many times things go wrong or bad, we're going to be okay, because I have God centered in the center of everything. And then, I'm mirroring that off onto you or onto myself. Yeah. I think a lot of it is, you can say blind trust, but if you're faithful, it's not blind trust, because He never fails. Yeah, it may not work out between you and a person, but that's just because it wasn't part of God's commitment to you. Yeah.
Totally. And I think it was yesterday, and me and Joe were talking about how, like, if you give 100%, then, like, you may not show up the way that you think you will, but you have to at least put that effort out there to get a high result. So if you wanted to touch on that at all, like, how does that, like, carry over into your life? Like, if you put in, like, a lot, have you ever noticed that it's just, like, you got to try, just keep trying?
Yeah, I think if you put 100% effort into it and you have the right people surrounding you that help you push you, then I think it will clearly show. You'll get results.
Yeah, and it may not be, like, ideal, but at the same time, it's just, like, it's something. Like you were saying before about if you just, like, show up, like, I saw something and it's like, if 30% is your all today and, like, you get 30% out of it, it's not bad. It's all you could give today, and that is commitment. You
Yeah,
still showed up.
absolutely. So I'm sorry. But I actually know that, like, a lot of my past coaches have always told me, you get 1% better every day.
Yeah,
You know,
I've never heard that actually.
In the course of a year or 2 years, think about how much better you're gonna be.
Yeah.
You just have to have trust in the process and trust in the journey and trust in God that it's gonna happen.
And, like, it could even be like you take a few steps back. Doesn't mean that you're not going to recover from it.
Right.
You're always going to take steps back.
Yeah.
You're always going to take steps back.
What I think is so cool is that God can take you on like such a different path than what you were intending.
Totally.
Like you could go in thinking this is gonna be the outcome, and it's something completely opposite. So I guess adjustment has a bit of a, like, I guess
A relation.
yeah, relation to commitment. I think that's kind of neat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. And then I was wondering if you guys had, like, a particular place in your life that you want to focus more commitment on, you know, like something that you struggle with commitment. And I don't mean that to sound, like, personal, but I would say for me, commitment can be hard with the faith life. Like, I do show up to Mass and I'm like, okay, I'm here, but the commitment is pouring your heart into it and actually experiencing it. You know what I mean? Because I think that some people think it's just checking the box, like that's what matters is that you went, but it's like, no, give it your all, put in everything you have, you know? So I would say for me, like, it would be faith life and then maybe, like, school, because, like, it's not always my number one priority in my head, and it shouldn't be. Like, we have other things to prioritize, but it's like I have to sometimes sacrifice something that sounds more enjoyable in the moment. Yeah.
I was just in, I'm in an elementary education. I was just in the major, like, orientation meeting.
Yeah.
And they are telling me about all the huge commitments that I'm going to be endeavoring upon.
Yeah.
And they were sitting there and we were talking. I was talking to a couple of the senior and junior, like, representatives of the major, and they were telling me, like, all right, this is a huge commitment. You're going to have to pick this over some social event or some other event.
And was that, like,
and
scary
it
for
was
you?
a little scary, like, going back on the scared to commitment and all that. And I sat there and I'm like, should I still do this major? And I'm like, okay, yes, I'm going to do this major, of course. But it's scary sometimes. But
it's
there's
because
also,
you're willing to give it your all.
Yeah, but there's also more important commitments to others.
Totally. I think that's what I was saying about, like, being scared of commitment, is because if you understand the gravity of what you're committing to, you should be scared. I think that's normal, and it means that you actually care.
Yeah, it's good to be scared.
Yeah.
Like, if I'm dating somebody and I'm fully committed to her and I'm scared to mess up, that's a good thing, because it shows that you care. You know, like they talk about fear of the Lord. I should be scared to mess up. When I mess up, I shouldn't be like, no, I should be like, crap, like, I can't believe I just did that.
Yeah,
like,
you don't
I
want to
shouldn't have
disappoint
done
God.
that. Yeah, you should be disappointed in yourself and scared, but at the same time, you should be confident in the fact that, again, I messed up, but I can get better.
Yeah.
You know, maybe this didn't work out with this person, or maybe I didn't pray today, or maybe I didn't do this. As long as you have the mentality of, that's okay, you just keep moving forward.
Like,
Things are going to happen. God's got a plan. You have no idea what that plan is. You know, I could want to marry somebody 5 years from now. I'll probably be wearing a vestment. Who knows?
Yeah.
So you just don't know what God's planning for you. So you have to look at the way, or at least when you fall, obviously be worried, be scared, know when you've messed up, but take it on the chin and just keep going, because you know that if you keep pushing, it's going to get better.
Totally. And I think there's something to say about, like, if you keep trying, even though it may feel like you're not getting anywhere and it's not successful, like, that is a part of it. Yeah, like you said about being scared. I think that being scared just shows that, like, there's room for improvement, but I think a lot of people take for granted, like, God's mercy and realize, like, oh, no matter how many times I mess up, God is going to forgive me, so they don't have that sense of fear. And that's something that always kind of stumbled me, like was hard for me to understand, was the fear of God. Because sometimes people have this really intense relationship with God. They're so serious. They don't see God as their friend, and it's just a different type of relationship. You know what I mean? And so for me, I always try to like strike a balance of, I should fear disappointing him the way I disappoint like my father. I mean, I'm not saying I disappoint him. I'm saying if I did. And if I do disappoint my father, I'm like feeling bad. I'm feeling nervous because I want to make it right with him, not because like I'm scared of like forced punishment or something like that, but because you care about like the honor, you know?
I heard something really cool the other day, and it helped me a lot because I know sometimes I get a little discouraged with prayer. I personally, like some days I'll be praying and I'm like, I just don't feel like this was the way I was hoping to feel.
You didn't get everything out of it.
What I wanted.
Yeah.
Or I didn't do it the way I thought it should be done. And I don't know, sometimes God has a way of putting people in your life to tell you a certain thing at a certain point. And I was like, dang, he got it this time. But she told me, she was like, Kenzie, even though you don't feel like maybe you didn't do the best job at prayer today, or maybe it just didn't feel right, he's seeing that you're trying.
Yeah.
And I mean, even though maybe you feel like you're stumbling, that effort and that commitment to continue on, to continue trying, is so important. And maybe it's not the outcome you're looking for at the current moment, but it's still gonna have an outcome in the end.
Totally.
Because your relationship with Christ is gonna be so much greater.
Yeah. And I was thinking about, like, kind of going back to the other thing, the fear that comes from disappointing somebody. I mean, it shows that you care, but it does humble you. Like, that sense of fear, if you didn't have that in a relationship, like, I don't want to disappoint them, you don't really care then. All you're going to do is just try to hide things from them. You don't feel a sense of guilt, you know?
So I think it's very fair to be scared, but I also think there needs to be a sense of excitement.
Yeah.
Like, you don't want to just be scared.
Yeah, it's kind of like an instinctual fear. I wouldn't say it's anxiety. Like, anxiety would be like over worrying and like too much fear where it like takes over your life and your happiness. I just mean that healthy sense of fear, you know, where it feels like something's actually holding you accountable. Like, if I sin, I want to have that feeling. I mean, I don't want to, but like I should have that feeling of like, I've disappointed God, I've let him down, I feel like I've disappointed my family. Like, there should be people around you that hold you to a high standard, you know? And so even in like a relationship and in a marriage, if you don't show up for your spouse and you're disappointing them, there should be a sense of fear that you didn't fulfill your commitment. You know what I mean? Yeah. So were you gonna add something?
I was gonna bounce off of that with like how you're saying, like, look at other people and you don't wanna, like, I think it's a good idea in a commitment, any commitment, to surround yourself with people who are in other commitments. Like, for me and Ken's, we look up to our parents immensely for their commitment to each other.
Yeah.
And that reflects on like who we date and the commitment we put into our relationship and stuff. So it's very important to surround yourself with like well-rounded people like that.
100%. And I think it helps a lot when you have role models like that for parents. And for somebody who doesn't have that, I would say what we were talking about before with Mary and Joseph is a ultimate example for somebody who doesn't have that personal tie, is to remember that like we have these role models in our faith life and how the faith life applies to the family unit. You know what I mean? Yeah. So before we like wrap up the show, I was wondering if you guys had anything else you wanted to say about commitment or just any kind of final thoughts.
You know, commitment, you got to remember you're not alone.
Yeah, we always have to tie the title in there.
It's like, you're not. You're in this, if you're in a commitment, you're in it together.
Yeah.
So.
And also, like, to talk about maybe somebody who goes to Ave if they're watching the show, or I guess in general, if you're struggling with your commitment to like your faith life, that there's opportunities on campus. Like, you can get involved in certain clubs, because I know, Matt, you said you're getting involved with some faith activities. They help hold you accountable and stay committed to that. And I think that applies to all things. Like, if I'm not doing well in school, I go see a tutor that helps me to stay committed to getting good grades. Or yeah, like the gym, if I'm forgetting to go to the gym and you have a person who goes with you and they're like, why didn't you show up today? You've now let them down. You're not fulfilling your commitment. I just think it helps so much.
The best way to build commitment is to surround people that will call you out when you don't stay committed.
Totally.
Especially, I mean, for the gym, for sports, like, especially
Your
with
faith
teammates. You know, if you tell people you want to be better and they don't see you holding yourself to that commitment,
I thought you said.
they should call you out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like they should call you out. Like if I go around the football team saying I want to do this and this and this, and I don't do any of it, a real teammate or a real friend will call you out with that. For that. But also one thing, kind of tagging off of what Kenzie said about faith, there are days where you don't feel like you've fulfilled your commitment to God, but something someone told us like a week ago was trying to love God is loving God. So even if you feel like you didn't fully commit yourself to Him for a day or a week, or maybe you only were able to pray once a week, or you didn't do it today, but you tried. Trying to love God is loving God.
Yeah.
And I would
The
say it's
intention.
also the same way. It's also the same thing for people. You know, if you're trying to love somebody, you are loving them because
Yeah.
you're putting in the effort to try.
No one said you have to be perfect. It's
No.
about the intention. And you can't use that as an excuse. Like, well, I'm trying, and it's like, I'm not perfect. I'm gonna mess up. No, like you should feel bad about it, but don't beat yourself up over it. Know that like everybody's gonna fail. It's just about wanting to do better, I think. Yeah. Okay, well, I guess that concludes the episode. Thank you guys so much for watching, and remember, you are not alone. Bye, guys.
Bye.